Hi, I'm Melody Shadenlo.
And my name is Ryan Fekrat.
And I'm Ayeneh.
And on today's episode of صدای دانشجو, we will be talking all about the MCAT. I have Ryan and Ida here who have taken the MCAT already and have some experience with it, while me, on the other hand, I have not taken it and I'm currently in the process of studying for it. So I'll be asking Ida and Ryan a few questions, and hopefully we'll be able to answer some questions that I'm wondering, and also probably the audience as well. Are you guys ready?
Happy to answer any question that you have. One thing that I wish that I had during my study time was someone to directly talk to. There was an abundance of online forums and things like that, people online sharing their advice from 7 years ago, but someone to just like pass information off of in person, I think is invaluable.
Yeah, I think like Reddit, for example, is really popular. I see they're always posting advice and everything, but I don't really know if I should.
We have some
rely
choice
on
words for Redditors.
We do for sure. Yeah, it can be. Reddit is like a world of its own, and I think like so what you take from it can be helpful, but make sure not to take everything. There's some pretty intense, emotions going on in some of those chats, and some people may be a little bit too anxious or things like that might, sort of psych you out.
It's a topic open-end forum, and I'm pretty sure almost everything goes on Reddit. There's not a ton of moderation in that sense of like what is like the main focus of the r/MCAT subreddit as it's actually presented, as it's done in practice. So in practice, I'm sure we've all seen as you get is like people sobbing about their scores, which is rather unscrupulous when you're trying to look for how to solve a particular problem on UWorld or something like that, and you're just bombarded with a lot of kind of crying about the MCAT, which can give you a kind of bad taste in your mouth.
Yeah, which is why I'm super excited to ask you guys right now. But first, could you guys just go over a little bit about your timeline so far with the MCAT, and how many times you've taken it, and kind of like what worked best for you?
Ida?
So my first take, I spent around like, I think maybe 8 months like studying for it, 6 months of like serious, like locked in, like I would say I was fortunate to be able to have like time set aside to do that, because I know not everyone is able to do that. So I was able to do at least like maybe, I don't want to give you like hours a week, but maybe like around like easy like 40 hours a week.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so
like
pretty much full time. Yeah. And so my first time doing it, I didn't really get the score I wanted. So then I did retake it. I haven't gotten the score back yet, but I have noticed significant improvements in my practice scores. And I think that journey of its own, and I know we'll get to it on like what are our testing like strategies, and like what methods did we use while studying. I think my first initial method wasn't really concrete, even though yes, I was spending a lot of hours, but was I using that time as like wisely as I like could have? Maybe not. But yeah.
What did you do differently, and what was your timeline length wise the second time around? So you said 8 months the first time?
Yeah, 8 months the first time, and my second time around, so I took a few weeks off and I got back into it, and I would say the second time around that would be around 3 months actually, because I was already on a certain momentum. I had my content review down, and I think just where I was at, I needed to practice more and really focus on my weak areas rather than just kind of like broadly focusing on all these different areas that like I was okay with. I didn't need to, sort of a waste of time. So I think just doing a lot of more practice problems, and reviewing those meaningfully, making your own flashcards on Anki or anything like that is really helpful, and doing that sort of at the end. So I think when I was doing that, I noticed that's where I was making those score jumps the highest than like I ever did in those 8 months. But that's not saying like content review is not important. Of course, content review is important, but I think after like a certain point, your content is reviewed and you need to really focus on like, am I do I understand why I got this problem wrong? Did I get it wrong because of content, or did I get it wrong because I didn't read the passage correctly? Maybe I didn't understand what the question was asking. So it's like focusing on like what my mistakes were. I think the second time around really, really helped. Yeah.
Yeah, there are so many different ways that you can get a question wrong on the MCAT.
I agree.
Among those ways is not, so you may understand the content, like you're saying, but you might not understand exactly what that answer choice is implying or what the question stem was exactly asking for. So many ways that they can get you with that, you know, aha, gotcha type of stuff. And that happens on the real exam. So be prepared and make sure that when you catch that type of mistake, that type of reading mistake, whether it's question or answer or even passage interpretation, you're documenting that and improving from that in some way.
Yeah.
But to answer your initial question, how did I prepare? I did 6 months of dedicated study time, about full-time hours. And I would say for the first 2 months, I did content review. I bought the Kaplan prep books, did not take a prep course, just self-studied. I like to read a little more than I like to watch videos, even though I do a little less reading than I do video YouTube watching. But whatever can keep you engaged is the medium with which I would tell somebody to study for content. If you'll be more engaged with videos, watch the videos. If you'll be more engaged reading, read. For me, reading, because I zone out when I watch videos. Then for one thing I did do was for PsychSoc specifically for content, I watched the Khan Academy videos at like 2 times speed, whatever the highest setting was, and just sat there, no note taking. And I didn't take very many notes at all on the books either, just reading and trying to internalize, because on the exam, you know, of course, you're not going to have like a note card with you. It's closed note. And then the remaining time I spent on UWorld, I did some practice questions in the Kaplan books, but, you know, or I should say I did them all of the books that I did read, but weren't super helpful. Helpful in maybe solidifying the content that you just read. But after that was UWorld, all of UWorld, except for cars, because it's not super representative, and then all of AAMC.
I heard Jack Weston is good for cars.
Mm-hmm.
You?
I did. I'm sorry, I neglected to mention I did do daily Jack Weston passages.
Yeah.
During the period where I was not doing AAMC stuff.
Do you guys think it's manageable and doable to study while being in school? Because I know a lot of people, sometimes they have to work while studying for the MCAT, or they're in school while studying for the MCAT. Me personally, I will be in school studying for the MCAT. So I just want to hear what you guys think about that.
I think so.
Because you studied full time.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it is. I think as long as you have like a good study schedule, you know, like what you're doing throughout each day, and, you know, really making like your time more meaningful, like getting the most out of like studying, I think it is possible for sure.
Also, when you're studying and you're in school, all that information should be fresh on your mind, right? It's a lot fresher than if you did what I did, where you wait till you graduate, and then I'm looking at some of the Gen Chem stuff, and I'm like, oh yeah, like I remember the voltaic cell, yeah, from years ago.
Yeah.
Definitely needed a bigger refresher on some of the later or the earlier topics that I had covered in my undergraduate career. So there's pros and cons to both. I would say a more concise and condensed study schedule is one of the benefits of studying while still in school.
Yeah. I think my biggest worry is that if I take like 6 to 8 months, I'm going to forget the content that I reviewed in the beginning. Or
I would say don't go over 6 months. 6 months is where you start to see diminishing returns. And even with regular Anki, near the end of my study period, 6 months, I actually started to feel like I was maybe forgetting some things from the earlier, or it was becoming more or less discernible for me to remember, like, you know, distinguishing events and content. It's all starting to kind of blend together. It helps that the MCAT is multiple choice and it's cued recall. So with that, test taking strategy, and so knowing what to do, how to deal with the stuff that you see, not necessarily being able to recall it all on demand, is I think better than having that like immediate, easily accessible huge bank of knowledge.
Yeah, this kind of leads to my next question. But would you say that MCAT is more of like a test of knowledge or a test of endurance? I know we're briefly talking about it.
Still a question, perhaps. What do you think?
Test of knowledge or test of endurance?
I would say.
I mean, it is 7 hours, 7.5 hours.
Strategy.
It feels like endurance. I mean, it did test my endurance for sure. I think one thing I've heard is like the MCAT is like 1 inch deep and 1 mile long, because the span of like content that it covers is just like everywhere, sort of all sorts of like different topics, but it doesn't really go that into deep. I think, at least in my experience, for like looking at my full links and things like that, like it was, I think for like amino acids, it's pretty like surface level, you know, but
surface level, but everything.
Everything. Yeah, that's true. Yeah. So I do think, I think it could be a bit of endurance for me, at least. That's what it felt like.
I'll tell you how I weigh in on that. Knowledge versus endurance. So of the discrete knowledge that you will be tested on the MCAT, you should know everything that you have in your prep books. Just try to get it all into Anki cards and do your Anki cards judiciously. There will be things even that you had never seen come up, even then. But they, I guess, propose that is surface knowledge. For example, I saw questions on spermatogenesis, but here's the kicker, is I have strategies for how to get things that I don't know correct in a multiple choice test. And it really comes down to when they're testing you on those discretes where it's like, what do you know about that topic? And then, I believe that's really what they're looking for, is when you're a doctor and you see something, I have no idea what this is, take a step back. Okay, what do I know about this? And that kind of leads into the discussion of, is the MCAT predictive of medical school success and all that? It doesn't really matter for being a doctor, but I think the same kind of lines of thinking apply to questions on like USMLE. If you've ever seen like a case presentation and it gives you a bunch of information and you have to pick apart like one important piece of information to make an answer, it's kind of how the MCAT is sometimes.
Do you mind sharing some of your strategies that you use?
Sure. So that's one of them, is what do I know about this thing? You see this question on spermatogenesis and you're like, okay, it's giving me locality. So important topics of the subject are coming up. Localization. And in your content review, you'll learn that certain functions of certain locations are most important. And so you learn to associate those things. You know, the epididymis does this, the testes do that. And, you know, this and that hormone go here and that. All the things apply. Another strategy to add on to that is to view your content, your bio, your chem, your fit, as one big interconnected web of ideas. These are not discrete chapters in a textbook. It is one big mass of knowledge that all connects. Especially think about it like metabolism. Each metabolic process feeds into the next one.
Yeah.
Each chemical, physical idea can be connected to all the others through some line of thinking, even optics, as niche as that can, you know, come up on the MCAT. But thinking about it like that, and so when it does come to that hard content question, which those discrete questions, you know what that means, discrete, pseudo-discrete, and passage-based. So those three types of questions, which one is directly based on information you see in the passage. A pseudo-discrete is where it's within a passage, but it's actually a discrete question. And discrete is they're flat out asking you, do you know it or do you not? For those pseudo-discrete questions where seems like you have no idea, you can pull from everything. What do you know? And then strategies for passage, so many. It depends on which section. Chem Phys, you can skim those passages and then go to the questions, and it's mainly about equations and Chem Phys phenomena. So having that content down really improves your score in that section. Cars,
That's the big one.
survive. That's the one that everyone has questions
Yeah.
on. And I don't have definitive answers on cars, but
What worked for you?
here's my strategy. I scored 90th percentile on my cars, which is not fantastic, but it's good enough. My strategy is I don't take any notes on the car section. I don't highlight anything. Maybe highlight one or two things. I try to read for the perspectives, the perspective of, and the questions, the perspective of the test writer. What are they trying to get me to see about this passage? As I'm reading, I'm trying to retain, I'm trying to picture the passage. Like as I read a book, I'm imagining a flow of images of what is being described. And that helps me retain the information a little better. When the author is speaking to the audience, to me directly, I'm really trying to understand what is the tone. Everything has like a spoken way of reading it. Like imagine reading the text, but like speaking it out loud. That helps you to establish tone. And then really when you get to the questions, the cars questions there's only so many variations of them.
Right. I think there's like 3 type of variations. It's reading comprehension, reasoning within the text, and reasoning beyond the text. So reading comprehension is, pretty simple. Did you understand what the author is saying here? Reasoning within the text is, well, given this topic that the author is talking about, like, does the author mean like this about that topic? And then beyond, I think, is taking like the author's argument and
take so many different directions.
It's really beyond.
Yeah, it's beyond. It's beyond.
They mean it when they say that.
Like they will give you a scenario, and there will be a king, or this is in the text. There's the king, and then there's a scientific society. Check me if you know remember what I'm talking about. This is in AAMC material. There's a king, and then there's a scientific society. The king doesn't like the scientific society, and they're of 2 different eras when they were nominated. And then it'll give you a hypothetical as a question. The relationship of the king and the scientific society is most similar to what? A pterodactyl and a pigeon, a lion and a sheep, or something like that. That is one of those like extreme weirdness reasoning beyond the text. But there's a point to that question. What is the point? It's, can you draw on what is the fundamental aspect of their relationship as presented in the text? Everything is within the text. That's the secret on cars as a strategy. My only other thing to say about that is I would always time myself on the passages. When I got to the passage, close my eyes are burning after taking this test for already like an hour and a half plus. So I'm just like closing my eyes to refresh for 5-10 seconds, breathe, and then boom, eyes are glued to the time at the corner, and I'm going to subtract, I believe I subtracted 5 minutes instead of 10, 5 minutes for time, so I know when to finish the text by. And that whole 5 minutes, the longer you can take to read the text, the better. Be better, don't try and rush through it. And yeah, that's cars in a nutshell. But biochem and PS, PS is kind of, or PS is psych-soc. It's kind of like a vocabulary test and a methodology of science test. It's in disguise. They want you to know those psychology, sociology words and phenomena and common tests. You can find all of that information in pre-made Anki decks and in the Khan Academy videos I thought were very beneficial. And then biochem is same thing, content review, but I would say on biochem it is, you definitely gain more by charting graphs out, by graphing every passage. Like draw along with the passage, whatever it is. Like it could be a topic of like cell bio, it could be a metabolic pathway, it could be a cancer passage. Draw it out as you read, and once you get, and you'll learn how to do this the more practice problems you do, what is actually important. Once you get to those questions, you'll realize that you had everything written down that they're basically asking for. I could explain more about that if you have questions, but that's my strategies for the test.
That's helpful. That's helpful. So would you both recommend then doing more like content review in the beginning and then, or how long? Oh no, you don't think so?
No more content review than is necessary, but you need to be thorough.
Do you think there's like a timeline for that, like 1 to 2 months, or maybe just cap it at 1 month?
1 to 2 months.
If you have, yeah, it depends on your time, your availability, but I think, yeah, 1 to 2 months is fair. I think, like, if I would go back, I would just start questions earlier.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, for sure. That made such a world of a difference for me, personally.
I'd say the question is probably how little content review can I do and be, like, fully prepared to take the test? And it depends on your weak areas in your undergraduate. If you have C's in chemistry and A's in all your other courses, go ahead and review Gen Chem first and make sure that you've got it down, do all the practice problems, etc. And then you can maybe give like a skim of the rest of the sections, like bio, yeah, I know all these organ systems, I know this pathophysio, you know, all this stuff I know. So it's where your most and least comfortable are, is how you divvy up your content review. For me, I was out of those classes for quite a while, so I thought just going through all of it at a pretty steady pace was good enough.
Right. And then did you incorporate that with UWorld then, like during your content review or after your content review?
It's kind of like a curve. I would say start with, this is amount of content review, this is time, and then this is amount of practice problems. As time goes on, you start to get more and more practice problems, less and less content review, to balance your time. And so, yeah, I think that answers your question. Initially, no, I would just do the in-text problems. But then as time went on, I would start to incorporate a set of 10, 20, 40, and then I might test myself with like a quarter-length exam, a full 59 questions on a particular topic, like when I finished a book. Yeah.
My last question. What is your advice on how to navigate self-doubt and setbacks and everything? Because for me, I get, if I see a score that I may not like, it's really easy for me to fall back. And I think it's really important to have a growth mindset. But I just want to hear your perspective on that, for me and the audience.
Yeah, I think for sure. Okay, so just studying for the exam itself is like such kudos to you. Like it's honestly a very difficult exam, and the fact that you are attempting to tackle it is an accomplishment of its own. I think like putting yourself through that study time is not easy, very difficult, and I really do get you on that. Every time I like would get like a practice like section that I would do and my percentage was low, I was like, oh no, and I would like let it defeat me. And I noticed that when I would move on to like psych soc, like a section that I like was more comfortable with, like that whatever mood I was in from like most likely like chem and physics would carry on to psych and soc, and that would like I feel like that would affect like my performance in that section. So I was like, okay, wait, this is not benefiting me. There's nothing I can really do to like benefit from this, like from having that like mindset. So I was like, okay, I'm gonna stay positive. Every mistake I make is an opportunity for me to learn and not make that mistake on the actual exam. And once I had that mindset, I feel like it helped me a lot.
It's you against you, and you have it can be a scary test, but you have a network of people who love and support you and want you to do really well, or just as best as you can. And your MCAT score does not define you as, dumb or etc. And you can get into med school with a whole range of scores. So just do your best and have faith in yourself.
Yeah, I love that. Thank you both so much. And thank you everyone for watching. We hope you found this episode helpful, and we'll see you next time on صدای دانشجو.